Welcome to the One Revolution Name Tags Chat. Today, I am joined by Samantha Bosco. Samantha was actually on one of our earlier chats way back. She is a cyclist, a Paralympic cyclist, double bronze medalist. I think we'll talk about what you won your first bronze medal by 4/1000ths of a second. Was that right? Is that right?
Yes, it is.
But what we want to talk about is strategies. And Sam has had a variety of different strategies in her life, and I also want to get to the strategies of being an athlete during COVID, during a suspension or a postponement of the Tokyo Games. When who knows? I mean, they've set dates and stuff like that, but a lot of these things continue to be fluid, and how you're going to train. But let's take a little bit of a step back. I know we've talked about strategies before. Can you tell me what was your go-to strategy as you were growing up?
My go-to strategy was dealing with pain. I don't think I ever truly realized that there was more than one strategy. I dealt with pain from 11 years old on, so I just had assumed that it was a given in my life and I would just have some level of pain every day, and it was just a matter of dealing with the pain. Um, until I beat myself to the ground. Then I had to get new strategies.
So with it, because part of backing up again as well, the reason you were dealing with pain, so you had a bowed tibia and fibula, right? And so ended up having surgery and ended up with one leg shorter than the other. Is that where the pain came from, or?
Yes, it was a bowed tibia. Now that I think about it, I don't know if there was anything wrong with the fibula or if it just came along with for the ride.
Okay, fair enough.
But I had a bowed tibia when I was born, and when I was 4, they took that part of my bone out, so it was shorter by 2.5 inches. And then at 11 years old, I had surgery to lengthen that leg, where I would end up with hip and joint problems later on in life. And that surgery, there were some complications, and I ended up spending 3 years on crutches, had a dozen surgeries, and oddly enough, have a right leg that looks kind of like it did when I was born. But now there's actually more problem now than when I was born. Um, there's no cartilage in my ankle, so my ankle is pretty much bone on bone. And the way that my foot came up, so when I had surgery, I had drop foot, which basically looked like Barbie's foot. My toes were pointing straight down. And when my foot got brought back up, that's when I lost all the cartilage, but it also shifted both my tibia and fibula inward, so it looks kind of crooked, but it's mostly just my tibia slid down, so there's no real movement laterally either.
Oh wow. Okay. Now, how do you? I mean, you've said that there's been fallout from the pain, but the thing is, as an athlete and certainly as a cyclist, I mean, cyclists talk all the time about getting into the pain cave, right? I mean, it's like you're climbing the big hill, you get into the pain cave and you're going to stay there. So it's like it's a badge of honor, it's a source of pride. How do you deal with the pain? Do you do you dismiss it? Do you distract yourself? Do you meditate on it? What's your source of dealing with the pain?
I I think that there are different types of pain. I think there is the pain that your brain is telling you you're in, that you're not necessarily in as much pain as you think that you are. And I think that a lot of the times when it comes to cycling and being in the pain cave, it's that type of pain. Your body is capable of more, but your monkey brain is telling you that you can't do it or your legs hurt, and you start to believe it. And I think that pain I've always done well at beating, because I've had such a strong will growing up, and I have two great parents that taught me very well to be stubborn and determined and work hard. So for me, when I'm in the pain cave, I kind of enjoy it because I know that I'm doing something to get there, and I'm doing something that's challenging myself. And for me, it's about overcoming that challenge. And so, like, there are times in a race where I don't even think that I feel that type of pain. Like, I'm already just in that mindset from the get-go that, okay, this might hurt, but it's only going to hurt for so long, and then it's better, or it's only going to hurt because I'm thinking it's going to hurt. And if I think of something else, then it doesn't hurt as bad.
Wow. So do you feel like when it gets painful that you have an advantage over the competition? Is that when it starts getting really painful, you're like, all right, this is good. This is when I get good.
Yes, actually. Now that you put it that way, I think so, because even today, I was just doing a virtual race, and there were like 10 different sections. And I sprinted for one of them, and I was determined to be the fastest female sprinter in the race. And after that sprint, where I like got the green jersey, it was almost like I came alive, and I was feeling better, doing better. I wasn't as tired, and almost like a switch flipped in a way that I was like, the beast was let out, if you will.
This is like the boxing match where the first time you get punched in the nose, you're like, all right, so it's really happening now. This is good. Like, I'm in it. This is.
I tasted blood. I'm coming for more. Even if it's my own.
That is awesome. But it has been difficult for you. I mean, it's obviously it's a source of pride. But talk us through some of the pitfalls along the way with regard to pain, or with regard to you overriding your sense of pain.
I definitely dove into the wrong side of pain and dealing with pain, where my body was hurting and I wasn't listening to it because I didn't differentiate between the two different types, or all the different types of pain. So for me, if I had physical pain, that was a sign that my body was actually legitimately hurting and maybe I should stop, I would keep going. And I would keep going, and I would keep going. And it did two things. It basically tore me apart to the point where I couldn't keep going anymore. And that happened with rowing, where I just kept going despite having knee pain from all the ankle pain that my ankle couldn't take, going to my knee. And I ended up having to retire from the sport so that I could continue to walk when I got older. But at the same time, it kind of made my body stop telling me that I was in pain and needed to stop because I wasn't listening to it. So I had to relearn how to listen to my body better and trust what my body was saying in that aspect of dealing with pain. And that took longer to get through and to relearn myself than probably anything else that I've really tried to do.
We've got so for the audience, it might be a little bit confusing as well, because we've been talking about cycling. You're a Paralympic cyclist,
Oh, yeah.
but you were a scholarship rower. Yes. In college, with one leg shorter than the other, right? Which gave you a bit of a symmetrical issue that caused the pain.
Right. Yeah. I didn't really know about para sport actually until I was 25 or 26. Before that, when I got off crutches at 14 years old, I took up rowing as a form of rehab to keep what movement I did have in my ankle still there, and fell in love with that because I was such a competitive person that I needed that outlet, and I wanted to be an athlete. I've wanted to be an athlete my whole life. So I pursued rowing on the able-bodied side. I'm still trying to figure out a way to say able-bodied that doesn't sound so terrible because I don't necessarily like that term, but I took up rowing and pursued it and ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Central Florida. And that is where the pain really started to get worse because I was spending more time in the boat than I was on the indoor rowing machines. And on the indoor rowing machines, the foot plates where the shoes attach are separate. So I could adjust for the leg length discrepancy because I could just move one forward so that I was almost like it was shifting my body slightly at an angle, but it wasn't doing detriment to me. In the boat, the foot plate is one solid piece of wood that's attached to a slide with wing nuts. So even though we tried to angle it, every time I pushed off, it would straighten out. So I was basically rowing at a disadvantage because it was making my leg length discrepancy more pronounced.
Wow. And rowing, I mean, you talk about going into the pain cave. Rowing is a sport of the pain cave because you're effectively just an engine, right? I mean, this is it. Go and go as hard as you can and then keep going. And it's going to hurt, like your hair is going to hurt and your teeth are going to hurt and all of this stuff. So, I mean, you've chosen sports where your superpower is helpful, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When I started rowing, it's funny because my dad has pretty much been my training partner in all sports. When I took up rowing, he started rowing, so we were both kind of rowing at the same time. And then when I retired, he got back into bikes also, so we were riding together. But when I was rowing, he was always telling me before I started doing a 2K or 4K test, which are 2Ks are springtime races and 4Ks are fall time races. And he always had to do a test at least twice a year on both of them. He would always tell me, you don't have to breathe for the last 2 minutes. And so that's always been my mindset, is that you just go so hard that even like you're just dying, and by the last 2 minutes you just want it to be over, and all you can think about is when is it over, that you just stop breathing because you're trying to go so hard, because if you go harder, technically it should be over sooner. So I kind of have carried that over into cycling for better or worse, I guess.
That is awesome. So you don't have to breathe for the last 2 minutes. Okay. And is that good advice? Is that valid advice?
For some races, yes. Most races, no. I've had to relearn breathing strategies, even because cycling breathing strategies are so different from rowing breathing strategies that I'm almost putting myself at a disadvantage sometimes because of that time I spent rowing. Like, I have so many positives from rowing that carry over to cycling, and number one being the ability to suffer and not even feeling the wall, if you will, that most cyclists say they hit during a race, or even runners sometimes. But I also have those disadvantages that I'm working on, but I feel like that's also kind of helped be a strategy of mine to realize that there are weaknesses that I can work on and not necessarily beat myself up over it, but actually work towards making those areas better.
You race in a variety of different races in cycling too, some of which really are sort of similar in some ways to rowing, where you're doing, is it a 1K or is it a 2K that you're doing on the track?
So I do a 3K on the track and a 500-meter time trial, which is really a sprint for 2 laps, but all the 500-meter time trial.
Right, which is 500 meters, so it's just a little bit shorter than 1K. Then,
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
But then you also do a time trial on the road and a road race.
Yes.
So these are like vastly different races.
Oh yeah.
Training, power systems, everything. I mean, so the shortest is your 500 meter. And you said that's just a sprint. And this is a fixed gear, right? So fixed gear.
Fixed gear from a standing start. get up to speed and go as fast as you can for 2 laps. Yes. And it's
Do you have any
my
idea what
worst event.
speeds? What's that?
I said, and it's my worst event.
It's your worst event. Okay. Well, we're
Yeah.
talking about it. It's okay. So how fast do you go? How, like, what kind of, like, when you say you get up to speed, how fast are you going?
Oh man.
Is it all wattage for you guys now?
I've done so many that I can't even recall speed for the 500s. Because for me, a 500 is like a training day and an opener for my 3K, because a 500-meter event on the track and the kilo for the guys, which is 4 laps, it's all about having an explosive start, and I just don't have that. And while I'm working on it, on some level, I know that that never will be my forte. So I typically just focus on the time, because that's really all I can remember, and that's what I shoot for, is to always get a PR every time I do it. So even if I'm not as high up in the results as I would like to be, I still have a PR or a chance to be better in an event that I know isn't necessarily a medal contention event for me.
How fast will you do a 500 then? Do you remember that?
I've recently broke 40 seconds, which is pretty big for me, but it's still 4 seconds or so off the winning time, which
Wow.
in 2 laps is so big of a difference, because there's not that much time to make up 4 seconds. You basically have to make up 2 seconds a lap, which is over 30 miles an hour.
Right. So you're over 30 miles an hour. So 2 seconds is like, probably 20, 30 meters.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's not as close as when I won my 3K by a long shot. It's a quarter of a track lap, actually. Just about.
Is that much? Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. So it's, yeah, 10% of, okay. So yeah. Okay. So with the 3K, you do the 3K on the track as well. And can you describe what the track is like too? Because this is, I mean, you're in the velodrome, right? It's pretty cool.
Uh, your definition of cool is probably the same definition I have of scary, if that's the case. The track, when I first went, scared me. And sometimes if you don't go for a long time in between sessions, I still get that feeling of being slightly scared, because it's a wood track, sometimes concrete, but most of the time it's a wood track because it's an indoor track that is 250 meters a lap, and it has an embankment so that the sides are angled, but there's 2 straights and then there's a turn, basically a U-turn. And the U-turn turns are angled at anywhere from 42 degrees to 47 degrees.
It's
And
like being on a wall, effectively.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it's about 2 stories high. So you don't typically try to think about how high up you are when you're like all the way at the top of the track. And usually the events that we do, you're at the bottom. But when we do the scratch race, which is basically a mass start event on the track, it's very, very, very intimidating.
And so, okay, I mean, we want to get to the 3K, but the scratch race. So this is like the whoever's last, right, to the finish line. You're plucking that person out of the field. Is that the scratch race, or?
No, I wish. That's the elimination race. The scratch race is basically you go for a set amount of laps, and first one across the line wins. So we'll
Okay.
do 40 laps, 20 to 40 laps, depending on which event it is.
Okay. So you're racing a variety of events on the track too. And so bronze medal in the 3K in Rio. And how does that work, right? So this is just a match race, right?
Yes. So on the track, we have the luxury of getting to have suffering in the morning and the afternoon session. if you're lucky enough to make the afternoon session. So the 3K individual pursuits, you have a qualification in the morning for us, which is basically going against the clock. And then the third fastest and fourth fastest times will meet up again in the afternoon and race each other for a bronze medal, called a bronze medal round. And then first and second will race for the gold and the silver, called the gold medal round. So when I was in Rio, we kind of went into Rio with the idea that I had potential because I was getting faster lap times than I was at the beginning of the year. And so I skipped opening ceremonies because our race was the next morning and I wanted to do well. So I did everything I could. I went to bed early. I had good food for dinner, all the works so that I could give it my best that day. And I qualified third and kind of shocked myself and maybe everybody else. I don't know. But I qualified third. And so I went back to the athlete village, hung out, got out of the velodrome, because a lot of times the velodrome can also take out your energy if you're spending a lot of time there when you're not racing. Fluorescent lights, you can see everything. It's going around so fast. It's just mentally exhausting. And so I went to the athlete village, hung out, and came back and raced the bronze medal match against a girl from Poland and was doing very well. I started out super strong, probably too fast, and I had a good advantage on her with 6 laps to go, and then that slowly dwindled, and I ended up beating her by 0.04 of a second. Just long enough for me to look up and see that I finished first before it switched to photo to double check.
And it was okay. So how do you know how you're doing? Because you start on opposite sides of the track, right? So you don't have a relative sense of where you are with respect to the other rider, but you're getting splits as you come along. Is that how it works?
Yeah, my coach at the time, actually, we had a different strategy. Typically, it is lap splits because you want to maintain a certain speed, and you go in knowing what pace you want to have to stay on target. For that particular race, my coach and I decided that we were going to do a slightly different strategy where he was going to tell me if I was up or down. And he told me I was up, and I was up, and then it started to come down, but I was still up. And then all of a sudden it went from giving me plus or minus to go Sam, and then the go Sams got louder, and then in my head I was like, where's the bell? Because the bell is the signifier for the last lap. And then once you cross the line, it's typically a gunshot from one of the race guns. And I was just dying to hear that, and I was just dying and hoping that I was going to hear it first. Yeah.
Oh, so that's the mentality of the coach. This is like it's like the Seabiscuit kind of thing. I remember reading that book about Seabiscuit, and he had to see the other horse, and if he saw the other horse, like there's no way he's going to lose.
Right. Yeah.
Dragging you in there. So you do these races on the track, the 500, the 3K in the Paralympics, and then you do the road race, which is typically, how long is your road race?
To the road race is typically 2 hours, roughly 2 hours. It's about 35 to 40 miles, give or take.
Right. So you've got 35 to 40 miles on the on that, and a totally different deal, right? I mean, it's because you also, on the road, you have your time trial, which is generally shorter, and that's where you're trying to figure out how fast you can possibly go and continue to go fast. But then the road race becomes that much more tactical, right? Where you're in the pack, and then can you sprint a hill? Can you break away from the pack? Can you do something? So how are you able to do all of those races at the same time? And are your competitors doing the same races, or are people specializing?
People are starting to specialize now. When I first got into paracycling, there was so few opportunity that you had to be good at both. But now it seems like the competition is getting even more intense, that you have to start specializing in something, or you're just going to be mediocre in everything. And if you want a chance to get on the podium, you have to just pick one or the other and start to specialize. I love doing all of the events that I can do, and I love the time trial and the 3K. And for me, they kind of complement each other, so that's become my specialty. When I first started, it was road racing, so it's not lost on me that it's not road racing anymore. But for me, I like the time trial and the 3K because it's all about what I put into it. And if I put the best I can into it, then I have a decent result because of just me, and not because somebody else did something that didn't go right for them and I just benefited from it. Like a road race is so much strategy that goes into it also, but a time trial, you're racing the clock by yourself, nobody else around you, unless you're passing somebody or somebody's passing you, you're by yourself and it's all about you. And I like that aspect of it. I like that I have a little bit more control in it, controlled chaos, I guess.
But it's a race of purity as well, right?
Right.
That
Right.
that it is based on who you are, and granted, based on your start position or something like that, you could get affected by elements where maybe the wind comes up later on or earlier or whatever, something like that, or it starts raining, or I mean, cyclists I think have to be the toughest athletes out there. Just watching it on television, and the guy goes and falls and basically almost like scrapes all of his skin and his suit off and jumps right back on, or that guy that went through the barbed wire in the Tour de France and stuff.
Oh
And
yeah,
yeah,
no. Oh yes, yes. I road rash is not fun, but you definitely keep going, and I've learned that pretty much the hard way. But for me, like, I don't know, it's the one time that I feel my most powerful, and I live for those moments because I like to have that feeling, and I like knowing that I gave something my all, and whatever the results may be, I gave it my best, and I'm working to always be better, because there's always opportunity to be better. No matter how far you come, there's still more room for growth and more room for opportunity.
how does that work on a daily basis? So is this what you're targeting when you're training every day?
No, it's definitely an ebb and flow of that kind of aspect. There are times when I'm riding really hard and I go for it, and there are even days when I can feel in my bones that I need to do something harder, and so I'll, like, right now I'll jump on Zwift, which is an online training platform where you can have virtual races. So I'll jump on there and get a race in just for that kind of uh, push to exert myself. Or like I'll go up with my husband up GMR, which is a local climb that's about 40 minutes for us, and I'll just suffer the whole 40 minutes and try to just time trial as fast as I can up to the top. But then I'll have days where we ride to coffee, which is 4 miles away, and then 4 miles back, and that's literally my training day. So it's definitely an adjustment in learning how to listen to my body, and at the same time, with what's going on now, knowing that I don't have to be as fit as I should be this time of year, but also not losing too much fitness that I can't be even more fit for the Tokyo Games.
We're going to get to that, but we've been talking a lot about the pain and about your ability to manage pain, and probably also your love affair with pain, I think is some of what it sounds like. What was the breakthrough for you though on the strategy side of being able to differentiate on pain?
My breakthrough was meeting my husband, Andrew, at a bike race in 2013. Um, he's also a cyclist. He is an able-bodied cyclist who has been racing since he was 17, I think, maybe 15. He got into road racing. He got into road cycling at 15. I'm not sure if he started racing at 15 or 17, but around there. And so he always had a professional bike fit. And when we first met, and I would come out to visit him and we would go train together, he would see how much pain I would be in the next day after having a hard ride, or even during the ride. Sometimes I would have ankle pain and sometimes knee pain. And he knew that I didn't have to be in that much pain. I just didn't know how. And I'm very stubborn to the point where I can ask for help because I just assumed like it was normal and that was my normal. And then he pushed me to get a professional bike fit, which basically just takes your handlebars, your saddle, your shoes, and adjusts the bike to fit you. Kind of like getting a pair of jeans that fit or a pair of shoes that fit. If something's too big, you don't use them. Buy the ones that fit you. So for a bike fit, it essentially gives you the right pair of jeans.
It's interesting because a lot of us think of bikes as sort of being like mostly one size fits all, and maybe there's a little bit of a difference, but
Yeah.
not necessarily talking about like how far out how long your stem might be for your
Right.
handlebars or whatever, so that you can get one into a comfortable position that's going to keep you safe.
Right.
But
Right.
two is going to maximize your power as well, right?
Right. I think for me, that was the biggest difference because my dad had the old school traditional types of fitting where you have like a bolt attached to a piece of string and you adjust your pedal based off where your kneecap is by using the string and holding it up and seeing where the bolt falls across your shoe so that it's in the right spot for the cleat. Like all these old school tricks. But then technology came about and new theories of thought came about. And now that my husband actually does professional bike fits for a living, you see all the differences based off your own genetic makeup. Like for me, when I first started, I had shims on the bottom of my shoe, between my shoe and my cleat where it attaches to the pedal. And I was essentially creating a high heel with how much buildup I had between my cleat and my pedal because it kept me at an angle where I was wearing a high heel. And now I have some of it inside the insole of my shoe so that my foot's a little bit more flat so I can push down on the pedal with more power. And it's all these little things that you don't realize because you don't have that knowledge, but I never asked. I never had asked anybody for that help. And then when I got the bike fit and I started riding and started having less pain with the bike fit, I realized that I was frankly stupid for never asking for help in the first place because I didn't have to deal with pain and I didn't realize I didn't have to deal with pain. And it is way nicer.
Because there is going to be pain all the time anyway. I mean, part of being a cyclist and pushing yourself the way that you do, and you said you do have your easy days, because that's also smart in your training where you have to recover, because if you're just beating yourself up, you're not going to be good. You feel like you've done a lot of work, but you're not going to actually be good. But then you're actually getting healthy, you're getting stronger as you're moving along as a result of the bike fit. How did that transform your life? What did that feel like? I mean, it's almost like you're leaving a great friend and your biggest enemy behind as you go forward. Like, how do you make this departure?
I don't know that I've ever really thought of it that way. It opened the door for me. I definitely try to live more in the moment and not get so caught up on past inadequacies, I guess, because I did used to be that way. I was very much a perfectionist, so I would notice when I did something wrong. But being able to ask for help kind of opened the door to being okay not knowing and being okay with making mistakes. And it opened the door to growth in my own mindset and strengthening my mindset because I was able to focus on the good type of pain the pain that you want to feel, because essentially, like, when you're training, or when you're lifting weights, or when you're working out, you're essentially tearing your muscles apart for growth. So there's some type of pain that's good because it helps you grow, but at the same time, it allowed me to kind of leave the wrong way of thinking about pain behind, almost like I was letting go of excess weight because I was letting somebody else help me carry it.
Did you dread it when you were training and racing like that, like the knee pain or the ankle pain or that kind of thing? Like it's coming, or was it just part of what you did?
Yes and no. I think for me, it was more of a a mental hurdle than a physical hurdle, because I kind of had always had that feeling of knee pain. I had just assumed that that was going to be the case. I did what I could to lessen the pain, but it was more of a mental hurdle for me. I felt like I was a burden. I felt like I almost had days where I was like, why is this happening to me? Why did this have to happen to me? I want to just be normal. Like, I want to just be able to go for a run even. So for me, it was more mental than physical. Like, I never truly dreaded feeling pain because I knew it was going to happen, and I knew like it would be a little bit better throughout the day. And like humid weather, it's better, and cold weather, it's not so good. So you kind of take the precautions, but the mental side of it can just hit you like a stack of bricks or a stack of books, and you don't see it coming. So it was more mental for me than physical.
Is there the grind too, where you're like, I think I'm doing damage to my body and to my potential future, or not? Or did you, or did that not even occur to you?
No, I knew it. I just kept doing it. Like, I tried to run for so long after I had surgery that I definitely was to a point where I knew I was doing damage to my knee, but I still did it. Like, I knew
Really?
that it was going to happen, and me in 10 years is really going to be super mad at 20-year-old Sam for doing that. But at the time, I wanted to do it, and so I pushed myself to do it because I thought, hey, I'm always going to have pain. Might as well try to enjoy what use of my leg I have now before it gets worse.
Are you different now than you
Oh, yes.
were? You
Oh,
are.
yeah. 100%. Yes. Yeah. If, like, even today, when I rode earlier, I had started getting a little bit of knee pain yesterday just from sitting in a funny position, which is my own fault. But I took it upon myself to end my ride shorter than I typically would have. Like, old Sam would have kept going. Old Sam would have tried to do like 4 hours on the trainer with her knee starting to hurt an hour in and just keep going. Me now, I know that that's not going to benefit me, and it's going to set me back in my training. And at the same time, I'm also doing preventative measures, like I'm spending more time in physical therapy, doing all of the prehab, if you will, to lessen the chance of having a catastrophic injury.
So it's a long-term plan as opposed to I have to win every single day because if I don't, then I'm a failure. How has this long-term plan changed? Because like the Olympics, the Paralympics were postponed in Tokyo. So you were supposed to be, I mean, you were probably getting close to hitting your taper as you're ready preparing for the Paralympics and going to feel as strong as you've ever felt and all of this. I mean, the stuff where you put all the money in the bank, right? With all that training, and then you're going to benefit from that, all that training you put in the bank. What are you doing now? How do you approach this now with COVID-19? Are you allowed to ride with people? Are you, what do you do? It's got to be a huge change.
It's interesting because I've said this a few times. I think it's been a blessing in disguise for me because the beginning of the year, I definitely had some mental hurdles that I had overcome leading into the beginning of all the COVID pandemic stuff happening. That when it hit, there was kind of that we don't know if it's going to happen, but it might happen. So we'll keep training. So I definitely had better fitness, and I was definitely working towards being more fit for Tokyo than I was for Rio. And then, but at the same time, like, I was learning more about myself and more things that I liked about myself, that it gave me the opportunity to tackle the mental aspect of things and the mental aspect of being an athlete and having that strong mindset. So then when stay-at-home orders started to take effect and the weather in California started getting all dreary and raining, and which not typical, well, I guess it's typical for January, but not typical for California. I spent more time inside riding and kind of just falling in love with the training aspect of things and riding how I felt that day, because there was nothing to train towards. It was just a matter of trying to keep some fitness and trying not to peak. And then at the same time, trying not to train so much that you have that burnout sooner, and then you stop training, and then you're even worse when you start training again for next year. So for me, it was a chance to not have a specific game plan, a specific week of training, a specific training ride. I don't have to do intervals if I don't want to. I can go do 100 miles on Sunday if I want to. And I kind of fell in love with riding a bike again and fell in love with being a cyclist, because I got the chance to do the rides that I wanted to do, or do the rides that were making me happy in the moment. So I feel like for me, while I've maintained fitness and I'm definitely looking forward to racing and traveling, I have grown mentally and physically throughout the process. So I'm looking forward to Tokyo next year. I'm going to be even stronger than I would have been this year. I know it.
So the mental side was that you needed to fall back in love with the sport. Is that what the big thing? And did you, or was it, or were there other things?
Yeah, it was a little bit of that. I've never not loved cycling, but I spent a chunk of time after Rio and coming home from Rio and kind of having that experience of being at a loss from not having a set plan or something to train towards, because it was done and completed and I did what I wanted to do. So I was kind of running away from identifying as a cyclist. Whether that be from societal pressure or other people around me, getting new cars, houses, having kids, all those kinds of things that you typically have when you grow up, I guess. So I was kind of running from being a cyclist. I felt like I had to get a college degree. I felt like I had to have my own house and put myself in debt, if you will. And so for me, leading into this year, it was kind of a turning point in where I was like, I love being a cyclist. I love getting to ride my bike. I love getting to do this. If that means I don't have this because I can ride and I can race, I'd rather race. And so the mental hurdle for me was not focusing on how I should be perceived and how society thinks I should be perceived versus what's making me happy and how I want to perceive myself.
Well, that's a fairly big thing to confront, that, you know, not having to be perceived the way that society said that you need to, not having to be who society said you have to be, but being comfortable with who you are and embracing being a cyclist. It sounds like that will empower you moving forward, that you're going to be way more powerful.
Oh, I feel like it already has. I feel like the second that I was like, you know what? I love being a cyclist, and if people don't like it, oh well, because it's my life. If I'm wrong, then I'll make the mistake myself. But like, it opened up the door where I started seeing more things that I loved about myself, or doing more things that I loved about myself, and started having a better confidence and a more solid attitude towards life in general. And if something's not making me happy, I can gracefully walk away from it because there are other opportunities in my life.
So effectively, you're healthier. I mean, we're
Yeah.
coming back to this theme a little bit, right? That, you get your bike fit, you're healthier. You're getting your head fit, you're
Yeah.
healthier. This is good. So is there any competition? I mean, that has to be hard where you'll go, I mean, what, 6 months, 8 months, a year potentially without any competition?
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be just under a year, probably. At this point, knock on wood, it doesn't get worse before the next competition, because all of real life racing is virtually, real life racing is basically canceled. But there are virtual races, and I've been doing a few of those, but it doesn't quite get the race aspect of cycling, because it's mostly like a time trial on a bike. Even though it looks like you're racing against other people, you're just racing for strength and speed. But my husband keeps me competitive because he can still outsprint me, and it's annoying. He finds ways to keep me competitive and to push me when I need to be pushed.
Bragging rights in the house, that's important
Oh
stuff. It
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yep. It definitely keeps me on my toes, because I've had to figure out ways to keep him on his toes, like attack early to try to get a city sign sprint and beat him, or like just lose.
Is this what you end up talking about over dinner afterwards?
If we're talking.
Have you had any contact with the team during COVID or?
Yeah, I've kept in touch with some people, and then we have a Thursday virtual time trial series that I've done off and on. More consistent in the beginning when it first started, not as consistent when it started to get warmer out, because I do have the luxury of being able to ride outside, and since I live with my husband, I can ride with him. But there has been that contact, and I'm keeping in touch with some of my teammates. So it's not lacking as much as it could be on that aspect.
Okay. But you don't have a ton of like check-in kind of stuff or specific rides or events, or are you getting any sense of coaching right now in terms of like building a particular training block or anything, or any targets that you're looking at?
I keep in touch with my coach. I send him my stuff, all my workouts throughout the week. And if there's something that looks off to him, or if I'm feeling like I need something else, he'll adjust. But for the most part, it's just having fun and challenging myself with my own rides that I create. Like this summer has been the summer of century rides. My husband and I and a couple other people have been doing Sunday rides to the beach, which is about 100 miles. Or we'll go to we got to go to the Hollywood sign, which is the first time I've gotten to see the Hollywood sign since living here for 5 years in California. Or like the Queen Mary. We found ways to have a good goal during all of this, that it doesn't necessarily feel like I'm missing out on having something to train for, even if it's going to the Hollywood sign. But I keep in touch with him. Yeah, I keep in touch with him.
It's an interesting thing, I think, for a lot of people as well, right? Is that you have to keep it interesting. You have to, like training, you can do the same thing over and over again. I mean, it's like eating oatmeal for breakfast every single day, right? It's like, I mean, and there are definitely people who do that. I'm not one of them, but there are people who do that. But your body reacts to that, right? And our body goes and basically can adapt to whatever challenge or stress you put on it. But then it just kind of plateaus.
Right.
So you have to keep shaking things up. And I think that sounds cool. And I imagine it's a pretty good climb up to the Hollywood sign as well, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize it was going to be that steep of a climb going along the side. And frankly, I was kind of disappointed because once you get up to the highest part that you can get to at the Hollywood sign, they have this big gate from behind the sign that is far enough away that you can't even really get a good view of the Hollywood sign. So I was kind of disappointed that I climbed all the way up there for not as great of a view as it was at the bottom. But I don't mind the climb up. It was more of it was a challenge to get back down because of the steepness and the amount of people that were there. So that part was interesting, but it kept it fun. It keeps it fun.
Amount of people, so tourists or other people riding their bikes?
Mostly tourists, mostly people hiking. There's been a lot of people hiking since all of this started happening, which is great to see. And a lot of people started riding bikes, which is super awesome also.
It's really interesting, and a variety of different bikes, right? I mean, you get a lot of the e-bike stuff going on now, but there are people who are out there, right? It's kind of a fun thing to see people on bikes.
Yeah, it's super fun. And growing up in the mountain bike world, like we were in Alaska too, like we were all kind of a close-knit family type atmosphere. You said hi to everybody, you encouraged everybody. So when this first started and you saw more people out and more people were waving to you, I was just so much fun and so surreal that it's kind of nice.
It's got to be that weird thing. It's like, hey, I'm waving to you, but don't get too close. We're going to keep our social distancing even, which is obviously really hard when you are drafting off of somebody, because if you're 6 feet behind, you're not getting any benefit from the draft of the person in
Right.
front of you.
There's no real drafting anymore. Crazy. It's crazy. And then we'll do rides, and most of the rides, there are sections where you go your own pace, so you're never with anybody that you like. Andrew will ride off, and I'll never be with him until we get to the top of the climb or the section that we stopped going our own pace, kind of. But even with cycling, like you have to be more than 6 feet because of how fast you can go in the wind. It's almost like you're following a semi-car on the freeway, and you have to give even more space. That's been a challenge also. But it is fun. You can say hi, and at the same time, you can give the stiff arm, like, keep your space over there. I'm over here. We're good.
We're doing this to be healthy.
Yes.
Let's stay healthy, continue to get healthy. What are you going to take out of this? I mean, it seems like there have been a few things that you've taken out of it already, that you're, sort of more, more at peace with who you are as a person, as a cyclist. But are there other things that you're taking out of this time that have you been able to do things that you wouldn't have done otherwise that might not even be cycling oriented?
There are a lot of things that I'll probably take out of this. I haven't necessarily had time to do other things that I wanted to do. I did want to learn how to make candles, for example, but I started working with a nonprofit just at the beginning of the summer that has taken up a lot of my time when I'm not training. So I haven't had the chance to do that yet. So for me, a lot of what I'm taking from it is just mental attitude and just enjoying the simple things in life and enjoying the time that you have, because you really don't know how much time you have.
No, and right now, I mean, especially as an athlete where, the athlete clock is ticking and not knowing when you can get back to a normal athletic life where you're training and you're racing and you're traveling and you're doing all of these things that are in season. Will you approach it differently when you get to when you get back to to what whatever we consider to be a regular life?
Probably. I think for sure that I'll go into things with a different mindset, and that in and of itself is approaching it differently to me, just because it puts me in a better place from the get-go.
Are you looking forward to that? Are you looking
Oh
forward
yeah.
to getting back to like the regular life?
Yes. Yeah. I'm looking forward to racing. I'm looking forward to travel. I'm looking forward to smashing some legs. I'm looking forward to all of it. It's just, you definitely appreciate what you have when you don't have it.
Yeah. I mean, that is the challenge with this, isn't it? Because it's also, I mean, it affords you a bit of an opportunity to take a step back and and have a more global view, something that you would not have had if you'd been in the midst of training. It's just, okay, how am I doing? How am I doing compared to how I think I should be doing? And it's like boom, 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 boom. Each step along the way, you need to hit the marks that you need to hit. And now it's kind of like, okay, take a little bit of a step back and look at yourself in a more holistic kind of way. How can you approach this, and then how can you be prepared? Because sometimes it is, I think that people don't realize just how exhausting it is to be in season, just mentally more than physically.
Yeah, totally, 100%. And the crazy part is that with track in the fall, winter time, and road in spring, summertime, we almost don't ever get an off season. So this is like the first extended off season I've had in 7 years.
Wow.
And I think the only other time that I've had an off season before that was because of injury. So I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying it, but at the same time, I'm super excited to see how much further I can go next year and how much more fit I can be going into the games next year.
Have you been in touch with any of your competitors or anything? Any people throughout the world and compared notes with them? No.
Not really, no. No, everybody seems to kind of just be huddled in their own little corners of the world.
Oh, that's interesting. So there's not like the Facebook kind of thing or something like that where somebody's saying, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." Maybe people are keeping everything quiet, but it'll be really interesting to compare notes once
Yeah,
once everybody emerges. What did you do?
yeah, it would be super interesting. Like, I've seen a couple competitors and friends post on social media, but there hasn't necessarily been that conversation of how has it been for you kind of thing. I have a friend who lives in Italy, and that's pretty much the most of what I've gotten is interacting with him and seeing how it was for him when it was pretty significant over there.
Yeah, they were on total lockdown. Yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't even go 200 meters from their house without having actual reason and paper to do so.
Yeah, it is crazy. And this will be a period of time where we look back and say, okay, that was the right decision. That wasn't the right decision. But in the midst of it, it's really hard to be able to do it. Have you been playing at all with your bike handling skills, like going back and forth between road and mountain, or has it been strictly road?
Strictly road.
Okay.
I have my time trial bike on my trainer, so I have been in my aero position and ready for time trials. Um, we looked into getting gravel bikes for some variety, but the cycling industry kind of blew up when all this started happening because gyms were closed, so people were getting bikes to exercise outside, and I can't find a gravel bike. So if you know someone, let me know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me think about it. I don't know if I do or not. We've talked a lot about pain. I mean, we've talked about pain throughout this whole thing. And as we're wrapping up, do you have a message for people? Like, can you take your story and help other people to one, break through the pain, but two, not grind themselves into dust? You have to have learned something along the way, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah. I think if I were to try to answer this in a way that got through to 17-year-old Sam, and I think that's the best way I can kind of think about it, is I would have liked to know that there's a difference between the types of pain earlier than I did, and knowing that there is good pain and then there is bad pain, and that bad pain is bad pain for a reason, and that you're not supposed to keep being in that kind of pain and to ask for help, even if you don't know how to get out, I guess. I feel like for me, the biggest hurdle I had when it came to pain management is knowing that I didn't have to do it alone. And I think for me, it's a little bit more of also a disability thing, because I kind of equate some of that bad pain and dealing with the bad pain to, I don't want to be a burden to somebody else. So for me, knowing that I could ask for help and being okay if somebody said no, but knowing that I could ask for help was the way to go in the first place. And to not be so hard on myself, like to not put myself through that much pain, honestly, because at that point, it's not just physical pain, it's mental pain. Because then you're just digging yourself further in the hole. So for me, I feel like knowing that it was okay to ask for help, knowing that there's a difference between the two, and not being so hard on myself would have been the 3 best things I could have learned earlier rather than later.
That is great. That is awesome. And great advice for people, I think, and really useful. What about the flip side of it? Can you help people push through that good pain? Can you give them something that's going to, if they have this big goal and they want to do that 40-minute climb that you're doing, can you help them to just say it's going to be great? You're going to love it when you get to the top. I mean, what's the message?
I don't know. I think I still have to work on that one, because I feel like for me, I've always been kind of stubborn and determined, and I'm going to do it and it's going to feel great. And I kind of like that. Like, I know I'm a little crazy. It's okay. I, right now, I think that knowing that giving it your best is the benefit of going through the pain is probably the best thing that I can think of advice wise. Like
And is that
for,
like a pride thing? Like where you take
no,
more pride in yourself, or
I don't know that I would call it pride. I think I would call it confidence, but I would more so call it like, yeah, probably, because I'm proud of myself when I go hard and I push myself past a hurdle. But I think the more that I push myself through that good pain and push myself to be better than I was yesterday or better than I was last week, then I see that I can do it. And I see that I can do more than just the sport. I can do something else that I think is hard, but I can try. But at the same time, like, I feel like a lot of people stop themselves from pushing themselves past that point because they're afraid to fail at it. And I think that's a whole different conversation.
well, in some ways, I think of it as putting yourself in a position to surprise yourself, which then brings you back the next day and you're like, oh, I found something new. Like this is great. Like it's not the same grind. It's okay, yesterday I did this and I'm wondering if I can do that and possibly even do that better today. So you get that build and that excitement that really makes your training worthwhile, purposeful, and fun.
Yeah, I think that the hardest part of that is that it's so individualistic that you just have to be willing to do it and find ways that work for you. Something that works for you or something that works for somebody else might not work for another person. Like for me, one of the tricks I have from rowing that I use still to this day in cycling is counting down distances because I like the numbers. So for me, I can almost get lost in the pain because I'm focused on something else. But that might not work for somebody else unless, so they have to find something that works for them. So I feel like it's so individualistic that it's more mindset than anything else. Because we can do so much more. We can do so much more than we think we can. And I feel like the wall and the hurdles are when you start telling yourself you can't.
Because then it's true.
Right.
then you've decided I can't do that, and you're going to be completely right when that's the case. But you
But
are
what happens when you can and you show yourself that you can?
exactly, and you're talking about different strategies of approaching this, where you're approaching your fitness and going, okay, can I count down? Can I do math in my head? Because then that's distracting me, or, whatever it is, or get into the rhythm of it, or, I mean, there's so many different tactics, or almost, I mean, it's almost like your breathing can get to be like, just, where you're meditating, basically,
Right. Right.
so you can get a lot of this stuff. This is absolutely awesome. We are looking forward to seeing you in Tokyo, which right now it is August of 2021, right? Yeah, starting at the end of August and going into September. But we will we will see how these things go. I think we have some more questions to answer in the interim between now and then. But Sam, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure. Give Andrew our best and tell him to try to see if he can stay in front of you, but it sounds like that doesn't work all that well for him.
We will. We will. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always fun to talk to you and catch up and just talk about life and hurdles and strategies and ways to
Yeah,
excel.
exactly. Now for the audience, this recording will be on the One Revolution page. So if you want to watch it in its entirety tomorrow, you can do that. It will also be on YouTube. So on the One Revolution channel, so you can go. So it's just ONE Revolution in on YouTube, and you can watch the whole thing. And actually, I think this is now the sixth one of these that we've done. So super exciting. And so thanks a lot, Sam. Have a great day and continue to train hard and have fun.
Will do. Have a good
Thanks a lot.
night.
Take care.